Every individual, every person, every human heartbeat that is pumping needs a purpose. And if you can't find yourself, then you might as well lose yourself in other people, because they will help you find yourself.
Spartans, listen up.
We need to sleep better. So how do you sleep better? Never thought about it before. And so I met Jack, I met Essentia. Pay attention to the mattress you sleep on because it's loaded with chemicals.
Recovery, cooling, and pressure relief, all in one mattress. Up to 60% more deep and REM sleep. Less inflammation, faster bounce back. No toxins, no EMFs, no BS.
My buddy Jack over at Essentia, he's kind enough to give us a code for the Spartan community. That's DECA, that's Tough Mudder, all of us. Use Spartan25, get a discount. Prioritize your sleep so you can sleep faster, you can do more burpees, you can train more, you can get healthier. When you sleep well, you live well.
Joe De Sena, CEO and founder of Spartan, host of the Hard Way podcast. I got a really, really hard man on the podcast, J.R. Martinez. This guy is a beast, Army veteran, speaker, author. Can I say in the entertainment space?
That's a good way to put it right there.
Well, welcome aboard.
Hey, appreciate you, man. Great to see you again.
I always like to find out where people grew up because, I have kids, and if there's some things we can learn, then maybe we can apply that to our own children and make them as tough as you. So where'd you grow up?
Well, man, I was born in Louisiana, and at the age of 9, moved to Arkansas, grew up in Arkansas, lived there till into my junior year of high school, and then moved to Georgia for my senior year of high school. But let me tell you something. My father wasn't in my life. He left when I was 9 months old. And for a long time, like a lot of kids, right, you internalize that and you start to make it about you. What's wrong with me? What's wrong with me? Something's wrong with me. Believe it or not, I actually met my father. I was probably 36 or 7 when I finally met him. Obviously, you asked the $1 million question, where'd you go? Did you get lost? What happened, man? And his response was pretty blatant and straight up, and which I appreciated that about him. And he said, I just forgot about you. That was hard to hear, of course, because the child in me, all I wanted was for him to apologize and take accountability. And it took me over 3 decades for me to finally get to that point and click and be like, man, this whole time I made it something was wrong with me. No, it wasn't me. It was him. And my mom, a single mom, it was just the two of us, man. And I had a lot of responsibility, a lot of autonomy as a kid. I had to, get myself up for school at 8, 9 years old. I had to get myself to school. I had to get myself home. I had to give myself homework. I had to do all those things by myself. I had to do laundry. When I finally was able to get a job, I got a job and like, hey, mom, here's the check, right? What do we need to pay at 15 years old? I think as a parent, and myself of 2 and a 13-year-old as my oldest, that's probably one of the biggest things that I've tried to, as parents, we're always striving to give our kids more than what we had, create a better life for them. But in that process, sometimes we take away the very thing that helped, as a word you used at the very beginning, make us hard, that make us who we are as adults, as parents. And so my kids, even though we live in a very nice neighborhood and a very cushioned life, don't come to me every single time. Yes, I'm here. And I think those were kind of like the simple things that really were part of my foundation early on. However, I will say this, and I think this is important for me to note, because very big is one of those individuals that looks at sort of the childhood, because for a very long time, the things that I was struggling with in my adult life really had nothing to do, and I know we'll probably get to it, but had really nothing to do with what I experienced overseas while in the military. I was carrying so much from my childhood. My mother was involved in very abusive relationships. I witnessed that. I felt completely isolated in the communities that I grew up in. No one I ever felt like cared. And so many of us in our early stages of life are looking for a place to feel like we have a community and to feel like we belong and we're seen and we're heard and we connect. And I didn't have that growing up. And my mom did something when I was probably 7 years old. The night before, the man she was seeing at the time put his hands on her. I called the cops. They took him away. The next day, my mom and I are running around town, and my mom is 4'11" and has this big smile on her face as if she just won the lottery. And I'm looking at her as this curious kid, and I'm like, why are you smiling? I straight up asked her. Why are you smiling? Like, I know what happened last night. There's no reason to smile. And my mom said something to me that was so profound that didn't make sense at the time, of course. She said, I smile to invite the blessings. If I don't smile, good things that are coming to us, I won't be able to receive them, to see them. Now, that didn't make sense until I went through my own real trauma in my early 20s. And I was like, I get it. That's essentially focusing on what you can control mindset. The problem with that is, so I learned something from my mom, focus on what you can control. But then the second thing I learned is you can't just, that's only sustainable for a certain amount of time. Eventually it's going to kick in. Eventually it's going to catch up. And it did to my mom. It caught up.
I think you nailed the smile through it piece, which was, yeah, we should all smile through it. But at some point it comes home to root. You got to deal with it.
Yeah, the smile only goes so long, man. Like it's a shield that can only be sustained for so long. And we see it. We hear constant stories of, as a veteran, we see it in our veteran community, right? Like, I mean, what happened, right? Everyone's like scratching their heads. What happened? This person seemed here like this and, you know, carried it, like loved and all these things. What happened? And we're just so conditioned with this shield. But, you know, I remember my daughter who, plays softball and plays at a pretty high level right now. And I remember one time I was out of town traveling for a speaking gig, and my wife calls me afterwards. She's like, man, I'm so annoyed. I was like, why? She's like, she forgot her cleats. No, she forgot her glove. Sorry, she forgot her glove. And I was like, and she's like, now I got to go home, grab it, I was like, no, don't do it. But she needs your glove. No, that's her problem to figure out. It is her responsibility to get her bag together, to get her gear together, to make sure she has everything. Like, no, don't save her. Let her have to now problem solve to develop that part of her brain. Ask teammates if they have an extra glove. Ask the coaches if they have a spare glove. Or guess what? Maybe she just hits the whole practice. Maybe she just runs the whole practice. Like, don't save her. And the same would go for me. My kids they know when I sort of shift my energy and my tone, they know we're not, all right, he's not fucking around right now. Like, this is serious. Okay. But I'm also like, I try to meet them where they are emotionally, right? I try to, like my son who's 4 and he's like, ugh! Like he gets all pissed off, something doesn't go his way and he's like, ah. And I'm like, listen, man, your emotions are fine. Like, it's okay. That's part of life. What's wrong? Let's talk this out. Let's communicate, right? And trying to give him the tools and both of them, but the tools. And my daughter taught me too, man. There was a period. A lot of people, when they look at my life now, they see me with my beautiful wife and my beautiful kids. And they're like, look at that beautiful family. And we have a beautiful family. Let me tell you something. When my daughter was a year old, my wife and I split up. I was straight up like paying child support. It was a real separation. And for 3 years, I was co-parenting with my now wife in therapy and in also sitting with myself. And that's one of the things that I learned on the day that I was injured. For a long time, Joe, I used to, people would ask me all the time, like, you know, that day, what did you feel? And I would talk about, I was afraid and I felt pain and I felt hopeless and I felt all these things. And over time, what I started to really take away from the day that I was injured was, yeah, those things. But more importantly, in the 5 minutes that I was trapped inside of a Humvee, and I know I'm jumping around right now, but in the 5 minutes that I was trapped inside of a burning Humvee, fighting for my life, screaming and yelling, there were several moments where my eyes would close because my body was getting weak and my eyes would close. But when my eyes were closed, Joe, I didn't feel any pain. I didn't hear the chaos around the Humvee. The only thing I could connect with, man, was my breath and my thoughts. And my thoughts were, stay in it, JR. Keep fighting. Someone's going to pull you out. And connecting with my breath. And that's something I still utilize that practice today in my life. And what I mean by that is when things feel, I'm never going to find myself, hopefully not, like in another burning vehicle, right? And most of us won't find ourselves in that situation. But we're going to find ourselves in life in situations that feel like we are just burning alive and there's no way that we can get out of this situation that we're in. We are suffocating here. Overwhelmed is the word, right? Burnout. Those are the key words that people are using. In those moments, what I like to do is essentially implement what I learned on the 5th of April of 2003 in that Humvee. And it's just pause wherever I'm at and just connect with my breath and connect with my thoughts.
And you started this by saying your daughter basically brought this back up to you, this concept?
Essentially, what it is that when my wife and I were not together, one night, my daughter, she was at my apartment, and I was getting ready to put her to bed. She had just came to the house that day, and we're going through the night routine to put her down, and she's upset, and she's like, "I miss mommy." And I said to her, I was like, "You just got here. Like, you're gonna see mommy in a couple days, like, and she's like, "I know, but I miss mommy." She's 4 at the time, and my insecurity, and because of my trauma that I was already carrying, went to this place of I'm triggered, and I went to this place of, you don't love me? You don't love daddy? You're going to see mommy in a couple of days. My daughter's crying, and she's like, "No, I do love you." And of course, it's like an asshole. I just carried on with it, and I put her to bed, and I sat there, and I've learned to sit, and I've learned when things don't feel right and just chemically off balance, I've learned to just sit and process and silence, no distraction, no picking up the phone and calling anybody, immediately looking for answers, unless it really calls for that. In that process, I realized, oh my God, like my mom used to guilt me. My mom never felt love. People always left her. And so the way to control the outcome was to guilt. And I learned that that's love for me. And so I had to, through that experience, I was like, oh my God, I'm repeating a cycle here. And so when you read this bio and you're like, yo, this guy's done all these things, I'm like, those are great things. I'm very proud and to say that I've done those things. But I tell you, probably the biggest thing I'm most proud of, man, is that I'm a cycle breaker, that I've broken that cycle, that I don't pass those bad habits down to my kids, that I can show up as a healthy human being, stay curious with them, and in the process, hopefully learn a lot from them. And my kids continue to teach me so much.
And so basically what you're recommending, unless it calls for it, like you said, is when shit is happening and we're wound up and maybe we're repeating the process to pause. Take a breath.
We're not conditioned. We're not conditioned to just pause. We're not conditioned to sit with ourselves. Listen, take all the other antics out of it, and all other debates out of it. And we just don't do that enough because it's uncomfortable. Because the minute you do that, it starts to bring up all these things. And when we start to feel those things is when people will stop on the side of a mountain. That's when people will say, I'm just going to walk this out. And yes, sometimes you need to walk it out. But in other cases, Charlie Plum, man, he was a pilot in the Navy, a fighter pilot during Vietnam. And, on his, I think 70 something mission in Vietnam, he was shot down and was captured, was a POW for 6.5 years. And he said, when he got there, he was so angry. Who wouldn't be? They relayed 2 messages to him. The first message was, acid does more harm in the vessel where it's stored than on the subject where it's poured.
What a great sentence. Yeah.
He had all this, as he likes to say, vitriol. That's the word he used. He has all this stuff inside of him. And you can sit here and displace it on people all you want. And eventually people are going to start to distance themselves. But who it's going to eat up every single second of the day for the rest of your life until you finally decide is you. The second thing they told him is adversity is a terrible thing to waste. And so what it did is it recalibrated his mind to think, I'm not a POW. I'm not a prisoner. I'm still on a mission right now. And so his mission then became, I have to protect all this information I have. I can't give them anything. I have to keep fighting, not let them know that they've won and they're defeating us despite all the torture that he was privy to. Think of that, man. If people listening right now can take that an individual that is confined to this small space with a limited amount of food, with a limited amount of water, with no access to the outside world, nothing, and can still recalibrate their mindset to think, I am still on the offensive right here. Like, that is it. And for me, that's my mindset. Yes, there's times that I know I got to walk this thing out, whatever it is that I'm doing, and I got to pace myself. But in other moments, I'm like, no, I'm still in this fight. And no matter how I get through this fight to win it, I'm going to find a way to win it because life is short and I know how precious it is. And I know, and I've collected so much data, Joe. You know, we get so caught up, and I'm sure your company's no different. Companies like to gather data to better understand how to bring in profit.
Operate. Yeah.
Right? To operate, to function, to have sustainability, all those things. Well, we have to look at ourselves as human beings, as brands as well, because we are. And we're equally collecting data every single day. Every interaction, every workout, every conversation, everything that we do, whether it succeeds or does not, and whatever that definition is for you, it's data. And the more data you accrue, the more eventually, when you finally find yourself in a similar situation, you could go back to the files and say, I'm good. So when people say, JR, you're so fearless. Well, why am I fearless? I'm fearless because I've gathered so much data that the data tells me that if I just lean in, that if I approach it this way, it's going to shake itself out. Even if that doesn't mean that I'm going to make $1 million on it, even if that I might make 10, 15, 20, 30, $100 on it. But the lesson is probably the more valuable thing that's going to help me further down the road.
Or you might not quit because you got data that shows you survived the other things.
It's data, man. And I think so many of us are going through this life of just internalizing things and internalizing that asset, as Charlie says, and instead of looking at an opportunity to learn something from it.
I love it. You are a walking, talking Spartan. And I mean that. Like the way you're stringing the sentences together, I'm like, this guy, I think he knows a little bit about the ancient Spartans. But let's take 2 minutes, and when you were recruited, what year was it? You go in, and what happens? How does that day occur in the Humvee?
I graduated high school in 2002. So obviously, our 9/11 already happened. We already had troops in Afghanistan, and there was buzz about us maybe going somewhere else at the time. I joined for a lot of reasons. It was a one-stop shop for me. Obviously, give back to this country. I wanted to get money for college. I wanted to get more discipline. I wanted to get more structure. I wanted to travel the world, right? And so I did. And I thought it was only going to be 3 years. That was it. I'll do 3 years. I'll get out in my early 20s and I'll move on with my life. You know, but something happened. I remember getting the briefing from a commander. But anyways, I joined the Army. I go to basic training for, 3.5 months. I get assigned to my unit. And then in January of 2003, and then in March of 2003, I deploy. That's how quick everything happened. Then in April, on the 5th of April of 2003, I'm driving a Humvee through a city called Karbala when the front left tire of the Humvee that I was driving ran over a roadside bomb. But prior to that incident, that day, we got a briefing from one of our commanders, and he talked about the importance of service. He talked about the important role that every single person played on a mission, on a team. He talked about all these incredible things. And after that conversation, I really started to apply, what I'm doing here as a private, mind you, in the Army, because I'm still private, I play a role in this thing. Like, I matter in this thing. And so then it started to restructure my mind where I was like, man, maybe I can't limit this to 3 years. So then I started thinking, when I'm done with this deployment, I'm going to go back to the States and I'm going to go to Ranger School. I'm going to try to be Pathfinder. I'm going to try to be all these things. And I'm going to try to do this for 20 years. That was my mindset. Whether you're following Mike Tyson's advice where everybody has a plan until they get punched in the mouth, or you're following, like where they say, you plan and God laughs. They're both saying the same thing. And I had this major plan, and then all of a sudden the 5th of April of 2003 happened. I was medevaced out of there, placed into a medical-induced coma. 3 weeks later, I wake up in San Antonio, Texas, which is the burn center for the military. And they're like, Corporal Martinez. And I was like, who the hell is Corporal Martinez? And they're like, you? And I was like, man, I'm a private. What are you talking about? They're like, no, you're a corporal. You've been promoted. And I'm like, I got promoted in 3 weeks just, for being a bad driver? That's what happened? When does that happen in society, right? And so, and it started the long recovery, man. And listen, the challenge that I really ran into was, one, I saw my face, my body, burns over 30% of my body, third-degree burns from head to toe. Then I was told that I couldn't stay in the Army, that I was going to be medically discharged. So I lost 2 identities, Joe. 2 identities. The identity that I had when I looked in the mirror every single day, and also the identity of being a man in the uniform, that I couldn't serve anymore. That was my purpose. And it took it away from me. I was depressed. I was angry. I was resentful. And it wasn't until probably about 6 months later, a nurse asked me to visit a patient who was equally struggling with the same things I was struggling with. And I went into that patient's room reluctantly and talked to him. And then afterwards, I started visiting patients every day, every evening between my own appointments. And ultimately, what I discovered was I can continue to serve. It's going to look different, but I can continue to serve. And every individual, every person, every human heartbeat that is pumping needs a purpose. And if you can't find yourself, then you might as well lose yourself in other people, because they will help you find yourself. And that's what I did. I just poured into other people. And by pouring into other people, just showing up, I was able to find, like, you know what? There's this other purpose I can have with my life. And from then I started speaking. Didn't want to do that either. Didn't think I had anything to say. Didn't think anybody gave a shit, would listen. And I've been blessed enough to travel all over the world to speak, much like you, and crossed into the entertainment space, became an actor on a soap opera called All My Children, this is the wild shit, Joe. When I was in the hospital, about, a month after I was injured, 5 years later, All My Children said, we're going to launch a storyline about a veteran, and let's see if we can find a real life veteran with some acting experience. And here I come walking through the doors to audition. I get the part. It was only supposed to be 3 months, but because I put myself on set every day, even when I wasn't recording, and I would watch the other actors, people that really trained to be in this position, and I would learn from them. And it turned into 6 months, 9 months to 3 years of me being on that show, until it went off the air. And then I got invited to be on Dancing with the Stars, and I went on that show. And listen, I could dance, man. People don't think that these vet guys can get down. We got some rhythm. But you're also, when you're raised by a single woman, you got no other choice but to have rhythm, because you're her dance partner, right? But the cool thing was about going on that show was I was able to sort of take that title that people had placed over my head, that you're a disabled veteran, that you're a burn victim. And that's what I would tell myself. Like, that's what I am. That show, I was able to show the world that I'm not a disabled veteran. I'm a veteran. I'm not a burn victim. I'm a burn survivor. Since then, man, it's just been this really cool journey, like, of trying new things. I, went to college, graduated college, a couple years ago, and, and I'm kind of in this cool stage of life of, like, what's next for me? I don't know, but it's going to be fun.
Listen, I'm sure you've heard it 1,000 times. I'm not just blowing smoke, but you are definitely an inspiration. You are literally what we stand for as a company. In a bunch of words, it just oozes out of you. You nailed it. Everything, you nailed it. Like, I'm listening to you thinking, shit, they don't need me anymore. They got him. How do people find you?
Man, hit me up on social. I am JR Martinez. If you're not a social person, you're more of an internet browser website person, jrmartinez.com. Thank you so much, man. It's always great to connect with you and to have these conversations. And like I said, I remember being in Lake Tahoe. I think it was 2019, and
we had some fun. We had some fun.
It was great, man, to experience that. And so, just love what Spartan's all about, and love to be here with you, brother.